Welcome to Echoes of Africa, where hidden stories, bold voices, and untold truths rise from the heart of the continent. Before you dive in, hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because every echo here reveals the Africa they don't want you to see. In October 2025, something important happened in Africa that most people around the world barely noticed. There were no emergency headlines, no breaking news banners, no dramatic warnings from analysts on television. Yet inside the headquarters of the African Union in Addis Ababa, a message was being sent very clearly, not just to Africans, but to the entire world. Africa was no longer asking to be included in the future. Africa was actively building it. The African Union Innovation Festival 2025, widely known as InnoFest 25, was not designed to impress foreign media or attract temporary attention. It was built to do something deeper, to reposition Africa's youth as the central drivers of continental power, innovation, and long-term strategy. For decades, Africa has been discussed almost entirely in terms of what it lacks. Lack of infrastructure, lack of capital, lack of stability, lack of opportunity. INOFEST 25 flipped that narrative by focusing on what Africa already has in abundance: people, ideas, urgency, and the ability to innovate under pressure. More than 70% of Africa's population is under the age of 35. Globally, no other continent has a demographic reality like this. While many developed economies are facing aging populations, shrinking workforces, and stagnating creativity, Africa is expanding. Every year, millions of young Africans enter adulthood with digital awareness, cultural confidence, and first-hand experience solving problems in difficult environments. The African Union has come to a critical realization. Ignoring this demographic reality would be costly, but empowering it could transform the continent's future. InnoFest 25 was built around this realization. Rather than treating young people as future leaders who must wait their turn, the festival treated them as present-day problem solvers whose ideas deserve direct access to institutions, funding pipelines, and policy frameworks. This approach marked a subtle but powerful shift in how continental leadership is thinking. Instead of designing solutions for youth, the African Union opened space for youth to design solutions for Africa. One of the clearest examples of this shift was the African Union Digital and Innovation Fellowship. At InnoFest 25, 18 young Africans from 10 different countries completed a year-long fellowship that embedded them directly inside African Union departments and organs. These were not symbolic placements, and they were not observers sitting on the sidelines. These young innovators were actively contributing to how the African Union operates, building digital tools, improving internal processes, and designing systems meant to strengthen governance, coordination, and service delivery across the continent. This matters because institutions define power. For generations, Africa's biggest weakness has not been a lack of ideas, but the absence of strong, adaptive systems capable of scaling those ideas. By allowing young Africans to work inside its own institutional structure, the African Union sent a strong message. Innovation was no longer something happening outside government while policy moved slowly behind it. Innovation was being invited directly into the policy-making core. Another defining feature of InnoFest 25 was its focus on inclusion, especially gender inclusion. Through the AU Go Gal Spark Tank initiative, 20 young African women between the ages of 15 and 25 were given a platform to present their innovations. These were not abstract concepts. They were practical solutions focused on real challenges such as climate adaptation, digital education, healthcare delivery, financial inclusion, and community resilience. In many parts of the world, innovators of this age are rarely taken seriously at institutional levels. At InnoFest 25, they were treated as strategic contributors to Africa's future. What makes this particularly important is that Africa has learned from global mistakes. Across the world, innovation ecosystems that exclude women tend to fail. When half the population is locked out of idea building, economies stagnate. By deliberately centering young women in its innovation strategy, the African Union is attempting to avoid that trap. The message was clear: Africa cannot afford to waste talent, especially not in a continent where human capital is the most valuable resource. Governance, often cited as one of Africa's most persistent challenges, was also addressed in a way that broke with old patterns. Through the AU Civic Tech Fund initiatives highlighted during the festival, young developers and innovators presented digital tools designed to improve transparency, citizen participation, and accountability. Rather than debating governance reforms only at the political level, these projects focused on systems that make corruption harder, participation easier, and trust more measurable. This is not unique to Africa's challenges. Many countries around the world are currently facing declining trust in institutions, rising public frustration, and political polarization. The difference is that Africa's innovators are experimenting with solutions early, using technology to redesign how citizens and governments interact. These experiments, if successful, will not only benefit African states, but could become models for other regions struggling with similar issues. A major outcome of InnoFest 25 was the strengthening of the African Union Innovation Lab. Innovation labs around the world serve a critical function. They allow institutions to test ideas quickly, fail safely, refine rapidly, and scale what works. By situating such a lab within the African Union itself, Africa's leadership is acknowledging that policy alone is no longer enough. The future belongs to institutions that can learn, adapt, and evolve at the speed of technology and social change. The Innovation Lab is designed to connect youth, startups, researchers, and institutions into a shared ecosystem. Instead of isolated pilot projects that disappear after funding cycles end, the lab aims to move successful ideas into continental systems that can operate across borders. This approach directly supports broader African Union strategies focused on digital transformation, science and technology advancement, and long-term economic integration. It is impossible to discuss InnoFest 25 without addressing its global implications. Traditionally, Africa has been positioned in global politics as a recipient of aid, a supplier of raw materials, or a market for finished products designed elsewhere. Innovation, technology, and agenda-setting power have largely been external. InnoFest 25 challenges that order. By building internal innovation capacity and aligning it with continental policy, Africa is signaling that it wants to negotiate from a position of contribution, not dependency. This shift should draw the attention of global powers. As the world faces overlapping crises in climate change, energy transition, food security, and youth unemployment, solutions tested under Africa's complex conditions may become increasingly valuable. Africa experiences climate stress more intensely than most regions, while contributing the least to global emissions. Innovations in renewable energy, climate-smart agriculture, and resilience developed by African youth are not only locally relevant, they are globally applicable. Many projects highlighted during InnoFest 25 focused on exactly these challenges. From clean energy deployment models designed for decentralized communities to data-driven climate monitoring tools, the festival showcased solutions built at the front line of climate impact. If such systems can work in environments with limited infrastructure and high exposure to climate risks, they can be adapted anywhere. For countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, South Africa, and others with growing tech ecosystems, InnoFest 25 represents expanded opportunity. Alignment with African Union innovation frameworks creates pathways for startups to scale beyond national borders. It also increases pressure on national governments to harmonize policies, improve regulatory environments, and support youth-led innovation more seriously. At the individual level, this moment matters even more. For decades, young Africans with ambition were often told that success required leaving the continent. The unspoken assumption was that serious innovation, funding, and impact only existed elsewhere. InnoFest 25 pushes back against that belief. It suggests that Africa is beginning to build systems capable of supporting ambition at home, while remaining globally connected. This does not mean Africa's challenges are solved. Structural inequalities, infrastructure gaps, and political instability still exist in many regions. But InnoFest 25 demonstrates a growing continental awareness that waiting for perfect conditions is no longer an option. Progress now depends on building while fixing, innovating while reforming, and empowering the very generation that will live longest with today's decisions. One of the most striking aspects of the festival was its quiet nature. There were no dramatic declarations aimed at dominating global news cycles. Yet history often moves this way. Major shifts begin as internal realignments before they become visible to the outside world. The industrial revolutions, the rise of digital economies, and the emergence of new global powers all started with decisions that seemed minor at the time. In Africa's case, the decision to place youth innovation at the center of continental strategy may prove to be one of those turning points. By opening institutions, investing in young women, experimenting with governance tools, and building innovation infrastructure, the African Union is laying groundwork that will shape the next several decades. The biggest myth still repeated about Africa is the idea that the continent is waiting to catch up. InnoFest 25 tells a different story. Africa is not waiting. Africa is testing, learning, failing, refining, and moving forward. The pace may be uneven and the progress imperfect, but the direction is clear. The future being built in Africa will not look exactly like the futures imagined in Europe, Asia, or North America. It will be shaped by different constraints, cultures, and priorities. And that is precisely why it matters. In a world facing converging crises, diversity of solutions is not a luxury, it is a necessity. InnoFest 25 may not trend globally today, but the systems, ideas, and people it brought together will continue working long after the cameras are gone. Africa's youth are not waiting on history. They are actively writing it, line by line, system by system, inside the institutions that define the continent's future. The world may not be fully paying attention yet, but it will have to, because Africa is moving from the margins of global innovation to the center of it. And when that shift fully takes hold, it will not ask for recognition. It will simply be impossible to ignore. You've been watching Echoes of Africa, where every story carries the sound of tomorrow. If this moved you, subscribe now, like, and share so Africa's voice never fades into silence.